Hi. We talk about it all the time, but our Patreon at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv goes a long way toward helping us do this kind of show. It supports a bunch of different shows, but this show initially was a stretch goal on that. So if you have the time or you have a couple of extra bucks to throw around, go to patreon.com/DuckFeedTV and consider throwing them our way. Thank you. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King. Here we are in this kind of in-between seasons space. My name is Cole Ross, and today I am joined by Autumn Greer.
Delighted to be here and looking forward to getting interstitial with you.
Yeah. So you're joining me here to talk about Bag of Bones. One of these books that has kind of a loose association with the Dark Tower. And we'll get to those connections there. Autumn, so first off, you're delighted to be here. I'm delighted to have you here. What made you want to hop on to talk about Bag of Bones?
You know, I'm a fast reader.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I can commit to doing just knocking out an entire book. So I love to be on these just because, you know, I got plenty of time at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always looking for something more to read. I've only read Bag of Bones once when I was younger, and I remember not liking it.
Mm-hmm.
There's some kind of ugly scenes towards the end of the book, and I remember reading it probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I was like, well, never going to read that one again. So I really wanted to revisit it and see, because again, there have been a few books that have really surprised me, like Salem's Lot when I read them when I was a little bit older, where I was like, this slaps.
Yeah. I'd be curious. So that those ugly scenes later on, those are a real kind of low point. Like, what was the high point that stuck out to you from that first read? Like, what did you carry forward with you as like, oh, this was cool about that?
At the beginning of the book, anytime that, because it was pretty recently when I read it after I had gotten out of high school, and anytime you see those references like to Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, you're like, oh, I've read that book. I'm smart too.
Yay.
I remembered a lot of those references, like, oh, I'm literary, just like Stephen King.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's it's really tied up with that too. And not only does it take some plot points or kind of setting ideas from that, but also like he straight up references it, alludes to characters and things like that. This is the, like, admittedly of the books that I included as part of the interstitial, season stuff when I was planning this. Bag of Bones is the one that I knew the least about beyond like a synopsis. And the synopsis, doesn't read like it's especially inspired. Like, oh, it's another writer from Maine. Okay. So I just kind of filed it away, for a peek behind the curtain. There used to be a big Wikipedia page that had a list of all of the books with Dark Tower connections. I don't know why they got rid of that article. You can still go to stephenking.com and see like a broader list, but they include some real tenuous stuff. Like, apparently any Stephen King book that references the tabloid Inside View is part of the Dark Tower universe, because that links all of these things.
I don't think I've ever looked out for that.
Yeah, no, it is totally. I think you can go to stephenking.com and go to the Dark Tower section. So I knew very little about this, and so I was primed to come into it. And I don't know that I like it very much. Like, there's some cool stuff, but we can react to it scene by scene. But I think this is the first one that I just kind of bounced off of, I guess notwithstanding like the Regulators, which I found distasteful, but still had like a bit of a, there was a gleeful carnage to it, like that was fun. Mm-hmm. That was fun. This one, I don't know how fun it was.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because it does have kind of a similar type of ending to the Regulate. Mm-hmm. Like where it's a happy ending, but not a happy ending. Yeah. But like I said, the last pages that we go through to get there are, they'll make you grit your teeth.
Yeah. So this book came out in 1998. It was one of the last books that King wrote before he got hit by that van and took a little bit of time off. It's about a writer named Mike Noonan who lost his wife to a sudden freak accident, which caused writer's block for him. And so he goes back to his lake house. He leaves his town of Derry. I saw that. I was like, oh boy, it's a Derry book. No, not really.
The funniest thing about that, sorry to interrupt, but is he left Derry and found somewhere more haunted and terrifying. That's mind blowing.
Yeah, like he never ran into any of the cosmic horror beneath Derry. We'll leave that to Bill Denbrough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very strange. This has something like man, even 1123 or 112263 like references how weird Derry is, right? Like the main character of that goes there and is like, whoa, something is not right, and eventually leaves.
Yeah. But old Mike Noonan, he's like, oh, good old Derry. Time to go to our cabin in the woods where everything is bad.
Yeah. Around the not at all menacingly named Dark Score Lake.
Ooh. That dark score sounds exactly like my parents didn't want me doing, like when I was a teenager. Like, are you buying drugs? You know?
Are you making some kind of dark score?
Yeah, I'm out at Dark Score Lake doing stuff you don't want me to. You know?
I'm a rebel. You can't stop me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We mentioned those connections to Rebecca. They're there, and it wildly diverges from that. Weirdly enough, just in doing research, occasionally you find King reflecting on his own work and naming his favorite. I think as of right now, his favorite work of his own is Lycie's Story, which I want to eventually get to and read because, I don't know, I want to see what he considers to be his favorite.
I haven't read that one either.
Yeah, it's part of like that weird like mid 2000s like post Dreamcatcher pre Under the Dome kind of stretch where I just where stuff just kind of seems to be a little bit wavy. I don't know.
It's like taking back an X or something, you know, like I was like, okay, I'll read Cell. All right.
Yeah.
You know, like the Stephen King's taking me out to dinner, you know, like trying to woo me back.
Yeah. With Cell, I'm not so much ready for it yet, but once you get to 1122, then we're fine. then you've shown that you've grown. Yeah, but for a long, long time, Stephen King said that Bag of Bones is his favorite, or one of his favorites at the very least. I have some real problems with the racial politics of this book, Autumn.
Yes. Yes.
And we can talk about the particulars of that as it goes, but this is kind of a warning for people who don't like when we bring a kind of a political analysis to the stuff that goes on in King books. Brace yourself for that, because I'm gonna have a couple of complaints. Even though I'm positive that King's heart is in the right place, the kind of death of the author reading of this is not very flattering, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah. Let's talk about these tower connections. They're tenuous, but they are there. Autumn, I'm positive you noticed the many recurrences of 19.
Oh, absolutely. Every single one of them highlighted in my book on my Kindle.
Yeah, it's weird because this came out 5 years before Wolves of the Calla.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where 19 started to get big. This really must have been his favorite book. I was so excited because just a few pages in, he's talking about like how he's a writer and everything, and he actually mentions I have the quote right here. One of the books that kept me from going higher was Steel Machine by Thad Beaumont, writing as George Stark.
Yep, the dark half.
Yeah, the dark half.
Yep. And imagine my surprise when what's his name, Robert from Insomnia shows up. Just like for a little
I googled it to make sure. I was like, there's no way.
Well, he even says like, oh yeah, he's going through some insomnia recently.
yeah, exactly. The best thing for me about that dark half reference is, and I know that the pages are different between the physical books and the Kindle edition sometimes, but it was literally on page 19.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I wish someone had been in the room with me so I could high five them.
Too spooky. I've never read the dark half. Obviously, I've got a big old page in my notebook of Stephen King books, and I eventually want to fill it up. or at least check all of them off. I didn't realize the Dark Half, they made a video game out of that.
Really?
Yeah, this is a little bit off topic. In the early 90s, a studio picked up the Dark Half as a license, and they made like an adventure game out of it. So I need to get go out of my way, get my hands on that, and do that on Hexcrank.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you get to play as a bird.
No, I think you just play as the dude.
Just soaring around harassing writers.
Yeah, it's no problem. Yeah. The other kind of callback or call out is they do mention Bill Denbrough. Like, you know, he is operating in this world. Why are these cameos important? Well, both Bill Denbrough and Ralph Roberts come from Tower related books. It and Insomnia, two incredibly Tower related books. Yeah. Another reason why this is kind of snuck in here before season 6 is we're going to be spending a lot of time in this area in Song of Susanna. You know, not in a TR-90, but they mention East Stoneham. They mention a couple of other towns that are nearby. Additionally, when Stephen King himself does appear in book 6, he does so at a lake house called Kara Laughs, while this book is centered around a lake house called Sarah Laughs. So it's pretty arguable that Mike Noonan is a twinner for Stephen King, just like he has set up these twinners of the houses that they own.
Wow. You know, speaking of all of these people showing up in the book, I have to say that our friend from the Duckfeed Slack, My Sinclair, might have ruined the Dark Tower series for me about a week ago. She had posted that it's in some ways a lot like fan fiction, and it absolutely is. You have all these characters showing up, like Sherlock shows up with the guys from Supernatural to fight crime, and then the doctor from Doctor Who pops in. You know, we've got all these like overlaps.
Yeah. I always hear fan fiction thrown about as a derogatory, and I for some reason I reflexively no, don't call something I like fan fiction. That's true. I thought you were going to say somebody in Slack called this the Super Smash Brothers of Stephen King. Bill Denbrough joins the fight. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually not too bad. But you know, like when you get all like the Hanna-Barbera characters together for something, you know, that's
Wacky
basically
Races.
the Dark Tower series.
Yep.
Scooby-Doo just pops in.
Oh, Stephen King writes a lot of ridiculous stuff. I don't know if he'd ever put a talking dog in. I'm positive there's been a talking dog in a Stephen King book. There's been a dog giving somebody a blowjob.
Oh yeah, there's Cujo talking about those bees in his head. He's definitely been a point of view character. He just he didn't talk so well.
Yeah, there's Kojak. He didn't really talk, but yeah. Huh. We're going to have to look into this theory.
So we can thank Mai for that.
Yes, thank you, Mai. The touch is present here. The touch / the shine. Mike Newton develops a psychic connection with a young girl who is of cosmic importance at a certain point. And also we've got a good old fashioned Lovecraftian horror going on, because even though the main threat in the book is spectral, you know, this is a ghost story, right? It is alluded to and outright stated at times that she has been co-opted or kind of supercharged by an outsider. Other things in the series that have been called outsiders are, you know, Pennywise, the Crimson King, etc. You know, so you could consider whatever is in charge of this to be something cosmic from beyond, you know, the ordered spaces, right?
Yep.
Yeah, let's talk about what happens in this book.
We start right off, and we open up and we have Mike Noonan, and he's watching the security camera footage of his wife in a parking lot who has just died. I mean, it's got a clever little setup with it, talking about how there was a car accident and nobody noticed that his wife had died in the parking lot because everyone was paying so much attention to the car accident. She just has an aneurysm and keels over. Yeah,
this is heartbreaking. Like, you know, as he's watching, like there are people who are trying to get attention, you know, for her because she collapsed, and everybody's like rejecting them because, oh my gosh, there's this cement truck just ran into this car. Nobody in the car accident got hurt. But no, Jo, as she was running across the parking lot, Joanna is Mike's wife. Yeah, just a blood vessel popped and she went down. Like Mike is, eating the candy from her purse, just in this daze. This sucks. Like, this is a very, very powerful opening to a book.
Absolutely. I got a little not confused at points, but I kept thinking unseemly things, I guess, about the dead wife. He's going through her stuff, and for example, he finds that pregnancy test in her purse.
Mm-hmm.
I instantly thought, oh, secret affair. She died. He's about to find out about her secret affairs.
Yeah.
And that was not the case. Like throughout, there were several times where I was like, oh, she was spotted with a man. Secret affair. Nope, it turned out to be her brother. Like I don't know why I kept thinking Joanna was a dirtbag, but
so Mike, it's worth pointing out that this is a first person point of view book, something the King does occasionally, but it's not normally his mode of communication for these, right? We see all this through Mike's point of view. Mike's kind of a jerk. Not in a way that makes him like less valid as a character, but he is very quick to jump to judgment about people, even if he likes them quite a bit. So like when you say like, oh, she, has this pregnancy test, and he is rolling that over in his head, like he's straight up saying, like, I think in that opening chapter, he says, I found evidence of her double life in this pregnancy test. So like there is a certain amount of unreliability to the narrator.
That's a fair point. Good. That makes me actually feel better that this was coming from Mike, that it's a Mike problem and not an Autumn problem.
Yes. Yeah. And he raises these, as possibilities before he ultimately decides. Like, he doesn't go around and start like burning all of her possessions because he thinks she was cheating on him. It just kind of falls into the miasma of his 4 years of grief. His 4 years of grief where he just gets away with not working because he wrote books and held them back.
I actually, this is, I had mentioned some of the stuff like the literary tie when I was younger. This was actually probably one of my favorite parts of the book, because Mike has these 4 manuscripts that he had worked on over the past few years, and he's obviously a very successful pop writer, just like little guy we know named Stephen King.
Yeah.
He's not like at the highest echelon. So he's got these 4 books, manuscripts that, he didn't want to over-publish and publish more than one a year. So he had them locked away in a safe deposit box. So I loved this idea that he's got this writer's block and he's able to fake it with his agents and everybody, but knowing that there's an expiration date on that. I thought the tension in that was really good.
Yeah. Like when they describe him going to the bank safety deposit box and just like picking up one of these manuscripts and putting a new cover page on it and sending it off, like without even looking at it, dog. Like I was listening to this and I was thinking there has to be some kind of clue that he's just sending them acorns, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that he has this deadline, he thinks that he will be able to break this writer's block that pops up, but he's just not able to. It's just it's amusing to me that he's able to pull the wool over his publisher's eyes like that.
Oh, and the irony is the publishers and his agents are all saying that these are the best books he's ever written.
It like, shows so much maturity.
To a new level. Yeah, you kicked it up a gear. I'm thinking Pulitzer.
Yeah. That's a little bit like someone coming up to you and saying, "You've lost so much weight." What? Oh. But yeah, this, the first portion of this book, it's actually very similar to the first part of Insomnia. Just as it chronicles a person after a, tremendous life-changing loss. There's a little bit of spook 'em ups here. Like he starts seeing visions of Joe around the house. Like he finds like a book that was under her bed, her side of the bed, and she is like down there. She says, "Stay away from my dust catcher." When he tries to pick it up. All this stuff is kind of making him unsettled being around this familiar place where she was.
I think this the front end of the book is just great. I mean, there's good tension. The loss is communicated well of his wife. This is obviously a pretty happy marriage. I mean, it's good. I mean, I thought his relationship with his dead wife's family and everything. I mean, these are well drawn characters.
Yeah. Like even the brother, God, I forget his name, but the brother who Mike ends up spending the most time with, he's a real, like you get a picture of it. You get a picture of how rambunctious he is. You get a picture of like the dynamic of that family around the holidays, right? Like this is all incredibly functional, except for the fact that Mike is coming unraveled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, eventually, with a little bit of goading from Joe's brother, he decides to leave Derry so he can go to their lake house, in this kind of unincorporated area called TR90, down the TR, they call it. The audiobook is very amusing for this, because Stephen King reads it. So you end up getting a real authentic version of like what he thinks the Yankee accent sounds like. So he goes like full on, just like completely inscrutable dialect when he is voicing those characters.
I'd watch Stephen King do a one-man performance of a lot of his books. I'd love to see Stephen King do Dolores Claiborne up on one of those black box theaters,
Oh, yeah. Have people in those ink suits just like carrying around the different like different props and things.
Yes, exactly. Dragging a well over, holding a round piece of paper up so you can like make the eclipse, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Just tasteful, a couple of nights at first. See if anybody comes by. Expand it to who do you get to be his understudy? Yeah.
He's got all those sons.
Oh yeah, he does. Owen can step in. Owen can take one for the team. So the reason that his house is called Sarah Laughs is because of this famous blues singer who was from around that area. Her name is Sarah Tidwell, and she had an act with basically her entire family going around the Northeast, very notorious around that time, but then notoriously disappeared. And the town has a bunch of theories that they just kind of like ran off, but you kind of get a sense that there might be something else here. And guess what? There is.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
He does a really good job when Mike rolls up on the house of kind of making the house into a character too. Like giving the house that name Sarah Laughs, everything like that. Like the house kind of becomes a character in the book. God, I feel like I'm those people that used to describe Sex in the City, huh? Every time I say something like that, I'm like, wow, New York is a character in the show.
Everybody talks about the sex, but let's take a moment to talk about the city.
Yeah. Nobody wants to know how is the city.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I think that's a valid, observation to raise, because a huge part of this book is a haunted house book, right? Like, not only does Mike spend time here and see things here, but also, like all of the interactions with the caretaker about the ways that they kind of went in and refurbished this. And the ways they did kind of the cleanings, and they shuffled a lot of like Joe's stuff away to her studio and things like, you see Sarah Laughs as kind of an extension of this community, right, through the different kind of personalities that pop up to help Mike come back here after a long time away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, we get a good sense of that. And we also get a sense that this is a pretty standard, Stephen King, kooky Yankee town, right? It could be a little bit of northern exposure up in here. That is quickly good.
It does seem, and they do mention this later, but when you're reading it for the first time, it does seem weird that these millionaire pop writers are in this kind of dinky small town at this lake house,
Yes. Everybody's kind of like bending over backwards to help him too, because because he has that money. But like we eventually find out that Noonan is not even the biggest fish in this pond. Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first big incident when Mike is in town is this very tense scene where I definitely thought something horrible was going to happen, where Mike spots a young girl walking down the middle of the road because she thinks the white line is the crosswalk and that is safe. And then her mom comes roaring in a broken down Jeep to come grab her.
Yeah. Luckily, our hero, our protagonist, Mike, had already picked the little girl up and gotten her out of the road because it's possible her own mother might have accidentally hit her. She was in such a frenzy.
As people around here would say, yeah. Um, yeah, and also they were in full view of a garage, so the rumor mill has already started. Yeah, Maddie just about flattened her own kid, Kyra, and these are kind of our secondary leads. As you know, Mike gets more involved in Maddie's life and starts taking not just a shine to her, even though his initial impression of her is not very flattering, let's say, but also, you know, starts seeing himself as a bit of a father figure to Kyra. I think she's 3 or 4 years old, something like that.
You mentioned his initial impression not being very flattering. I have like probably 4 places in my notes where I just wrote things like "F you," "Screw you," because he continuously, because Maddie's not very wealthy. She lives in a trailer, and I guess maybe Mike Noonan thinks like a lot of upper middle class millionaire pop writers would think, like, oh, I bet her house isn't like, I bet her decoration's bad. Like he just thinks she's trailer trash almost every time he sees her, but I guess is almost congratulating himself because he can see what's, that tarnished penny. He can see that copper underneath, you know?
Yeah, it's real
condescending.
It's real gross and condescending and paternal. And also it's, alongside, calling her trailer trash and making all these assumptions about what her house is like and what her life is like. Like his initial assumption is that like she's abusing her kid. And one of the first things that makes him take a shine to her is when he notices how healthy their relationship seems to be, and the fact that Kyra doesn't have any bruises or things. He looks at all of that, makes this kind of derogatory impression of her, but then like starts getting real skeezy about her too. Like, whatever, an older man being attracted to a younger woman happens all the time in real life and in fiction, but it's very hard not to read this as like a bit of a fantasy fulfillment, specifically because King is writing, he's putting his self-insert writer character into this and having him not get with her, but kind of head toward getting with her.
Yeah, it's like he's like, I bet her shorts cost $1, but her legs look really good. It's just that kind of like you're saying, like, oh, okay, like we get it. Like she's poor, but like, oh, she works at the library, so she's smart and poor.
She has a Vincent Van Gogh print on her wall and not a Velvet Elvis like I assumed. I don't think he actually says that. He is surprised by the Van Gogh print, but
I think he does literally say that. I think he says a Velvet Elvis.
Okay, if I forget if there was an actual thing.
But again, that's like what all my notes. Like every time he does it, I just write like "F you."
Yeah, like eventually their relationship evens out, and it becomes the usual, just kind of like romantic arc. And that the usual arc for a King book where it is doomed to end horribly. But yeah, I this didn't leave a good taste in my mouth at all. I was happy when Maddie ended up being a little bit more fleshed out as a character, even though she is still very much like a pawn in all of this. Yeah. So, blah. Kyra's a sweetie though.
Oh, she's cute.
She talks all messed up like a little kid would, and just an overall sweetie.
She's one of the first age-appropriate Stephen King children we've seen. Like, she's not like little Jake from Dark Tower, and she's like, look at this novel that I wrote. It's got a picture of a tower on it.
Yeah.
like she's actually like written like she's the age that she is.
Uh-huh. Yeah, although she does speak in very complete sentences, which I have no 3-year-old that I've ever been around has done that. She could just be a really bright kid. Most of the 3-year-olds I know could be really fucking stupid too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, her mom is just poor, but she does work at the library.
So it evens out.
And she's got great legs. Yeah.
He obsesses about her breasts too. Yeah. Not Kyra's, but about Maddie's. Like it's always about her small but firm breasts. Like there's a little bit of this that like sounds like it is literally going to be like The Lake House or that one Nicholas Sparks movie where that runaway is guided by her love interest, dead ex-wife or something like that. Like it feels like it is going in that direction.
As she held the food stamps in front of her in her clenched fist, I couldn't help but stare at her supple, youthful breasts.
So yes, we learned a little bit about Maddie. She is recently widowed. Her late husband was named Lance DeVore, and she asked Mike not to talk about what happened here, notwithstanding the fact that it happened kind of in the middle of town, and the garage guys saw it, so it was already going to get around. She says, "Hey, this is not really a good time for us to have a." For me to have let her wander out. Like, the reason Cairo got out was they just had an argument about when they were going to go swimming. Cairo wanted to go now. Maddie wanted to go later.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are two things that Mike took away from this, though. The first is that Kyra's name sounds almost exactly like the name they were going to give their daughter. Him and Joe, I mean, Kaya is what they would have named her. Also, Lance DeVore shares a surname with Max DeVore, this kind of stand-in for a Bill Gates-esque figure, this computer software millionaire from around these parts, who I think his biggest invention was a program that let people do like MS Paint with one of those little rubber nub mouses, rubber nub mice on a laptop, something like that. Yeah. But yeah, there is a connection. Lance is related to Max, as we find out. I want to hear what you think about Max, because Max confuses me.
You know, they kind of set it up, and he's almost improbably angry and evil. Like, the first interaction that Mike has is, he's met Kyra, admired how lovely and poor she is, and then he gets this phone call that night. And it's Max DeVore basically just right off the bat, like, screaming at him, like, I know what you saw. I mean, just kind of grilling him, trying to find out, was she letting that child run in the street? Could she have hit the child? Just these questions, I guess, kind of insinuating that she's negligent. And when Mike doesn't play ball, I mean, DeVore starts threatening him, like, I'm going to subpoena you. I mean, it's weirdly aggressive, and it's a situation where just a simple phone call, like, hey, I'm just worried about my granddaughter. Like, it's almost, Max DeVore isn't doing himself any favors with this. I mean, I guess the argument is that he's so rich and so powerful that he can just do what he wants. But I mean, flies, vinegar, honey, all that, man. Like, just say, I'm worried about my granddaughter. Was she okay?
Yeah.
You'll get farther.
I just want to know what happened. No, this isn't about me trying to get custody of her. Me, an 85-year-old wheelchair-bound man, trying to get custody of a 3-year-old girl from her mother. No, it's not about that. Yeah. No, I think Mike even at one point thinks about or muses about, people who are so rich that they have ceased needing to regulate their emotions, right?
Yeah.
And that's very much what's going on with Max, along with some, other more deeply rooted animus that is going on that we're
we'll find out that he's been kind of a terrible person since small times.
Yeah, and he comes from terrible people, also from small times. It's real rough. But this is the worst thing that Max could have done, right? If Mike was left to go about his way, he probably would have seen Maddie and Kyra, down at the library every once in a while, etc. No, this pisses Mike off enough to where he decides, you know what, I'm going to use my meager resources, my meager $5 million resources, to put Max in the ground, basically saying, like, if he wants a fight, if he is suing Maddie to get that kid, that is obviously not right. He thinks that he's going to be able to, throw his money around, but that is just not the case. So guess what? You have just made an enemy of a rich, bored person.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. This is a good life lesson for everybody. Yeah. Like, don't piss off like a millionaire that doesn't have a lot to do.
Yeah. He will ruin you. Yeah. So this gets them even more closely involved. Maddie is not really in a position to turn him down, which adds this other weird power dynamic to their relationship. It sounds like I'm like picking nits at this. No, my real problem comes a lot later. But yeah, that's ultimately what ends up going on. And alongside this, Mike also starts encountering this very strange looking woman named Roguette. or Roget in the audiobook. It's Roget, but I cannot look at this word and say it as Roget, so I'm going to say Roget. This strange woman who has kind of unnatural looking hair, and she has resting scream face. Let's say she looks like the guy or the thing from the Edvard Munch painting The Scream. So she sticks out like a sore thumb wherever she goes.
Yeah. She's not a nice lady.
No. She asks like weird sexually suggestive questions. You get the sense that she's there to help spread rumors. You know, the pervading rumor is that Mike is sleeping with Maddie instead of just, wanting to sleep with Maddie. All of this stuff. And this starts a creamy middle of the book where it's hard to really discern like an order of events, because it's really, it turns into Kramer versus Kramer for a little bit. Like it's about legal wrangling and hiring detectives to, look into the past of the Guardians ad litem that they try to bring forward as just a bunch. The real horror of this to me is how pervasive Devore's influence is. Like just when he gets Maddie fired because he is the largest and almost sole donor to the library. So like, hey, the money's going to dry up if you don't get rid of her. Bye. Stuff like that. Like that kind of power so pettily wielded is bleh.
Yeah, just so in a legal case he can say, well, I mean, she's an unemployed mother that lives in a trailer. Well, I mean, you're the one who made her unemployed.
Most juries don't hop more than once or twice. As long as you stay 3 hops away, then you're fine. Yeah. What do you think of this middle section?
It's interesting. It's the one thing that I think is a little bit I guess implausible is Maddie. Everybody's fallen in love with Maddie, the son of the millionaire, the writer millionaire that moved to town, the young, dashing, red-haired young lawyer, John Storrow. He's also falling in love with her too. Like, man, everybody can see the penny under that tarnish. You know?
Yeah. No, everybody wants a piece. Yeah, it is very strange. Although I was expecting the love triangle between who knows, is that a love triangle? I was expecting there to be more conflict around the fact that John Storrow, takes a shine to Maddie while Noonan is playing more of a long game about it.
Yeah, I thought that they would end up in kind of trying to woo her, both a little bit more aggressively.
Yeah. And she is taken out of the equation before that can come to a head. We're going to get there, but that like in what is possibly one of the most jarring bouts of violence since that explosion in the stand.
Yeah.
Not the big one, not the nuclear one, but the one in the house while they were planning.
Yeah. We just made a committee. We ratified the Constitution.
We were working on bylaws. We were inaugurating a task force, and that's the next step to an action committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're about to take names for a sanitation director.
Yeah. So while the legal wrangling is happening, Mike is dealing with these hallucinations that he's been dealing with since like his first night. Like the first night he could swear that he heard the sound of a sobbing child coming from the pipes. Oh no, Pennywise is here too. No, that's just the plumbing work that they did. No, it's actually ghosts. Sarah laughs is chock-a-block filled to the rim with ghosts who are making him taste lake water in his mouth. He gets visions of people drowning. People are talking to him through fridge magnets.
It seems like he's like, for somebody that gets like the terror sweats and passes out and hits his head if he tries to look at his old typewriter. It seems like he's strangely unfreaked out about all of this ghost shit that's happening.
He initially just tries to cohabitate. Like when he sees that they're trying to communicate through fridge magnets, instead of being like, all right, well, I'm going to put this bad boy up on Zillow, see what we get. Somebody else's problem now. He goes and buys more magnets so they can write better.
Yeah. I guess, again, that's what living in Derry for so long will do to you. This just seems like a regular ass day to him.
Oh, he's deranged. Yeah. Oh, he never knew what normal was.
Yeah. Because otherwise it makes no sense.
Yeah, he's very placid about it. His initial attack is like, well, I have roommates that I cannot see and sometimes wake me up, but blah. This culminates in a dream. Man, it is a very freaky dream sequence where he has a ghost three-way with Maddie and Sarah, Sarah Tidwell and Joanna at the same time. It's like a triptych orgy, is I think what he calls it.
But before anybody gets excited, I mean, it gets pretty gross. It doesn't go well. It's not fun and sexy.
No.
Like maybe at first it is, but it's yeah.
Yeah. It turns out, I think this is one of the first times where Sarah turns on him. It happens in a big way later. But yeah, during all this, he also manages to pull out his old IBM typewriter and starts writing again. He thinks he's recaptured the magic. I like the twist with that as well. He's so superstitious about it too. Like, I did all my writing up in that office and it doesn't matter if the air conditioners broke up there and it's 109 degrees. I'm going to write up there. God damn it.
And after there's been all of this buildup where he's not able to write, I mean, he's had to abandon his career since his wife died. The juices, they start to flow again.
Yeah, it's almost like somebody's helping him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's writing a book. Takes place down in Florida, where he took a little vacation. It's his usual kind of suspense mystery kind of deal. And yeah, he's also doing this. Another thing becomes apparent. Joanna was coming to TR90 very frequently. And in fact, he talks to Maddie, as they are mentioning, or as they're talking about Max DeVore, she says, oh, he always showed up at the baseball games, sitting there creepily and raspily laughing whenever there was a good play. Oh, I saw your wife here. She was with a guy. Uh-oh.
Mm-mm-mm. Yep.
Yeah.
Not good.
No, except it was her writer. It was her brother. The same brother who was such a chum before. No, she was here investigating. She was going to do a magazine article, an expose on the town and the house, Sarah laughs, and about Sarah Tidwell herself, kind of looking into some history that the town doesn't want anybody to know about.
And the town is like surprisingly vocal about not wanting anybody to know about it. Like the caretaker guy, that's such a cool guy that is like, oh, we're happy to have you back. Sorry about your wife. So supportive, is like, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Like,
she should
stop looking into shit.
She was sticking her nose where it didn't belong. Yeah. Everybody is very quick to, kind of turn against her and make it seem like she is the wife of the local big shot writer who, left here, hasn't been back in years. And all of a sudden he wants to write a hit piece about all these good and honest people down here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that is another aspect of this. He's relieved to find out that, yes, Joe was actually just pretty much a saint. Even though he uncharitably thought, who knows? I don't know what I would think in that situation. I especially don't know what I would think, because I, unlike Mike, have not recently developed psychic powers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you and I should just start leaving notes all around our houses just in case we ever, die in a parking lot or something that just make no sense, so our loved ones can just pore over them for years. Like, ooh, what did Autumn mean? Talk to that guy. Like when she wrote it on this Post-it note and hid it or something, like.
See, the thing is, my loved ones would expect me to gaslight them like that, so. So I don't know.
Another one of Cole's patented goofs.
Yep, a patented prank him up. Got us again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've hidden treasures somewhere in my new house. Gotta solve a riddle.
They say it's in the basement, but it's built on a slab. What is he talking about? Get the jackhammer. Oh.
Exactly. We got to find old man Cole's millions.
Millions of pennies. That would actually sink to the core of the earth. That'd be very funny to do. So anyway, but yeah, he's got this strong psychic connection with Kyra that has a little bit of a sinister root. It even goes so far as to almost take them kind of toe dash. Actually, they have a dream one night where they are both inhabiting the bodies of people who attended like a 1900 or 1901 fair nearby, where actually Sarah Tidwell and her whole band played.
There's a moment in there where I just feel really relieved for Mike, because after he and the little girl have had the shared dream, Kyra's telling about it. He's like, yeah, she said that she spent all night with you last night and you guys were hanging out. And he's like, haha. He must be so glad that like Kyra didn't say anything that made it sound like this crazy old man like came to her room like a pedophile or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, he must be like, wow, yep, we went to the circus. It was great.
So
yikes.
Just like Mike is a little bit is a little bit too comfortable with what's going on at his house, Kyra is completely acclimated to this. Like nothing about this is strange. She talks about the refrigerator people or the Frigidator people who leave her messages, and what's her name, Maddie, like she's more blasé about this than the mom in The Sixth Sense. She's like, I don't know what's going on, but I guess I'll just leave you two to your business.
Like, what? Why would people not, like, who's spelling this stuff in my house? Like, yeah. I mean, why did these people not care?
Yeah. Well, Mike says, well, maybe she got up and walked out, got up and, sleepwalked down to the fridge and wrote that herself. And Maddie rightfully says, I would be more scared about my daughter sleepwalking out into the street than I would be of ghosts.
I mean, to be fair, you've been through your daughter ending up in the streets, so
yeah.
I mean, you do have a good way to measure that.
Yeah, good basis. At the very least. Yeah. This dream sequence it gets really goofy and kind of goes off the rails a little bit because not only is Sarah wearing Maddie's clothes and eventually starts singing these menacing lyrics directly at Mike and at Kyra. The townspeople, they notice that something is wrong here and they start chasing them. Mike eventually goes into this like eldritch haunted house where everything is, trying to attack him and Kyra. It's only by, kind of coincidence that they weren't killed in this haunted house or that they weren't stranded in 1901.
Yeah, the book definitely starts getting weird at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. Just I like the idea of the haunted house that is bigger on the inside than on the outside. However, it feels out of place. But it's out of place for the first half of the book. It is not out of place for the back half. Also bizarre, something that is played for the height of horror that just to me seemed kind of funny was the murder attempt that Max and Rogette tried to make against Mike. This just read as slapstick comedy to me.
Yeah, that's right. So after the court case is kind of resolved and they're like, we're not going to give a 3-year-old girl to an 83-year-old man that's infirm. We're going to leave, the child with their mother. They're pissed. Max and Rogette are pissed, and they end up like forcing Mike into a lake, and then old Iron Arm Rogette, who apparently like would have been a hell of a pitcher, is throwing rocks at him so he can't get back to shore, and they're trying to drown him.
Yeah, Max straight up like hip checks him into the water on his mechanical wheelchair. I guess all wheelchairs are mechanical. On his electric wheelchair, knocks him in. Rogette like beans him in the head. Like they're trying to keep him, like like they're following him up the lakeside path as he tries to outrun them, and they're just like plinking at him. To me, that just reads as slapstick, even though it reasonably like somebody trying to exhaust you or kill you by a head wound in a lake is pretty bad. The fact that it is this incredibly old and infirm man and this still pretty old and freakish looking woman doing it with stones just feels goofy to me.
Yeah. It seems, and I mean, he eventually does just swim away. He swims to a raft, but I mean, it's written like it's a very near thing.
So they made
again. Rogette must have a hell of an arm.
Yeah. Well, Max even like taunts her about it, saying like, "You never used to throw like a girl." Max is a real piece of work. So they made this into a TV movie that ran on, I think, A&E, starring Pierce Brosnan, weirdly enough. I kind of want to load that up or find it so I can see this scene to see how they handled it to make it not be ridiculous.
So, I mean, not like the part of Mrs. Doubtfire when Robin Williams throws a fruit at Pierce Brosnan's head.
I think that they might just cut that scene in, right? Like, oh, we're just going to splice this. It matches continuity
Let's just
perfectly.
save some money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just over and over that orange hitting Pierce Brosnan in the head and Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah. And then just put like a water effect, as it slowly fills up, and then R.I.P. the end. God, I always forget that. Not always forget. I forgot that Pierce Brosnan was in Mrs. Doubtfire. That was weird, right? Because that was right around the time that he started playing James Bond as well. Huh.
He was definitely a hot property for a little while.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, I might pull up the miniseries just so I can get a sense. It's just to see like how somebody would envision this. Regardless, though, this attempt fails. The court case is in shambles, and after one final menacing note from Max and Rogette, Max kills himself. He kills himself and wills Maddie $80 million on the condition that she stays in the TR-90 for over a year, and Rogette apparently leaves town.
I mean, put the money in my bank account, and I'm having armed guards around me every second of every day.
Yep.
Build me a bunker.
I will take out loans and pay them back when I get that money, because I am positive that this crazy old crank is on the level. Yeah. Yeah. Turns out not to be the case. Mike seems a little bit too genre savvy to take solace in this. Additionally, Maddie is kind of bugged by the by the presence of those conditions. John says like, yeah, I can get that taken off. That's unreasonable, etc. But regardless, there appears to be some kind of ulterior motive. At a certain point, Mike starts entertaining the idea of leaving town himself, at which point the magnets start going crazy. He attempts to talk Maddie into going to Derry with him, but she, having gotten her job back and also, knowing that she has this money coming, sees no reason to stay. She has more options than when Mike offered the money for the legal help, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So
she could offer to pay him back in a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, be like, hey, thanks for that, like probably 60, 70 grand you spent helping me keep my kid.
Yep.
Here's it back with a little interest.
Yeah. That makes it sound like she's, champing at the bit to get him away. Like she has fallen in love with, with Mike. So she wouldn't, blow him off like that. She just doesn't want to upset her life, She thinks they can be happy here in TR-90, even though everybody in the town is getting like weirdly more hostile. She's getting calls with people calling her the C word and just generally menacing her because they believe that she drove the town's largest benefactor to kill himself. This is kind of where the slide into the end starts picking up, so we can start kind of revealing some of the mysteries that have showed up here. The clues in the magnets eventually lead Mike through a couple of 19-based clues and crossword-based clues to realize that lots and lots of people in the town give their kids C and K names. And it also points him to some fake owls beneath Joe's studio, where he finds out where he finds Joe's notes hidden inside the owl. The notes about the probable murder of Sarah Tidwell and the subsequent drowning deaths of lots and lots of the town's kids.
It's ominous. It makes me glad that Mike Noonan didn't die earlier in that lake. Otherwise, he'd probably be on the Hauntin' Stuff squad.
Oh yeah, he would. Well, he almost ends up being on the on the living side of that squad in a very creepy scene. Probably some of the most effective horror in this. But yeah, weird coincidences. Everybody's a Cal or a Ken or a Carrie, things like that. So we mentioned that crazy bout of violence and such. Well, that happens during a celebratory barbecue. A storm is rolling in, and basically from out of nowhere, some townsfolk including a crooked cop on the take, drive their car through Maddie's lawn, injuring John, hurting his arm so bad he's never going to be able to use it again, and just kind of unceremoniously shooting Maddie in the head.
Yeah, like it was a big surprise because we had just gotten through this very kind of I don't know, she's wearing these shorts and she's dancing to the radio and none of the guys can take their eyes off of her, and then she gets shot in the head.
Yeah. Boom, dead, like her left eye is gone. Like it is incredibly jarring. Yeah, incredibly jarring, incredibly graphic. And, her dying words, she is crawling toward the trailer saying Kyra's name, like looking at Mike as best she can, like telling him, protect Kyra. And that is how she goes down. It comes out of fucking nowhere. And you think that we're on kind of the downward trend. Like we have obviously passed the climax of this, right? Because the main antagonist is dead.
Mm-hmm.
No, we haven't. It's, again, I say the word heartbreaking on the show a lot. Very heartbreaking, because of their psychic link. Kyra actually understands exactly what has happened, and Mike has no ability to hide it from her. Like even as they walk out, he is trying to, get her to, just like not look, promise to close your eyes. She understands, and he has no way to shield her from that.
So Mike's trying to take care of Kyra because that was the last thing that that Maddie had asked him to do, keep her safe. And so they go back to the safest place on earth. Sarah laughs.
Yep. Yeah, that like maybe the Frigidator people will come back.
Yeah.
This is where the really creepy thing happens, because when he's there, he gets this compulsion. Like, okay, she's covered in all this mud. She's in bad shape. We need to put her back together. Starts to draw a bath for her, and he gets this compulsion to drown her in the tub and then kill himself. Like out of nowhere. Like this is the first time that the ghostly presence has actually started trying to like hijack his body. It's only Joe that manages to stop him from doing this. Like, what did you think of that? Like the way that it just kind of insinuated itself.
The way that it was written, it kind of came on so slowly that I was confused. Like I actually thought for a second, I'm like, wait, why does he want to drown her? It was like written so subtly, just like you said, like it kind of segued into it. And I was like, wait a minute, what is happening? No, this isn't a good idea. And then, like you said, you start to realize that there's some outside forces that are encouraging him to do this.
Yeah, it's a real good payoff for the first person narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
and it does start to explain why he wanted them to stay in town.
Yeah,
the old man.
It gets even hairier, guys. So Joe stops it and, gets Mike to realize like, hey, the reason something is, this stuff is happening, the reason that you're kind of at the center of this is that you actually do have blood relation here in the town. He's been puzzling over this weird remark that was made, about this kinship that Max DeVore felt for him. Like, oh, our great granddads, they worked in the same pit or whatever. That absolutely couldn't be the case. Except for the fact that, through some weird cousin relationship kind of stuff, oh, he absolutely is. And that is terrible, because all of this is because of a curse laid on the town by Sarah Tidwell.
And there has never been a more deserved curse. Like, Sarah, I feel you, girl. Like, with what happens next in the book, like, you just curse everybody you want to.
Absolutely. This is very much justified, and it's really upsetting what happens, because Mike makes his way to her grave, led by this tree that looks like a pointing woman, like he has seen, where he is stopped by several ghosts from these establishing families, and is shown exactly what happens in very, very graphic. He's shown it in graphic detail, obviously, because he's shown it as it happened, but also it is explained. This is.
It makes you sick to read. Basically what happens is the younger DeVore and some of his buddies were upset because these black jazz musicians had settled into their main town, and the town was accepting them and everything, and they kind of basically go in to teach a lesson, and they end up gang raping Sarah and then killing her child in front of her.
Yeah, drowning the child in front of her, and then going back and raping her again. and ultimately killing her when during this process, really all that she can do is laugh at them. The inciting incident, she laughs specifically at Max, or I can't tell if it's Max or if it's one of Max's, fathers or whatever. But yeah, eventually they're killed and, buried in a shallow grave. The description was very hard to get through. A lot of the language used in terms too, you had alluded to at the beginning. I mean, it's a very uncomfortable scene, and it, know these things like this have in the past, and we're aware of kind of the history of this nation, etc. But it's very uncomfortable to read. Yeah, because like nothing about that particular scene feels unrealistic.
Exactly. I think that's what makes it so upsetting.
Yeah. So the curse that is laid down, is that all of these people, basically anybody who was involved in the rape or anybody who stood by and did nothing or helped cover it up, as long as they're around here and as long as they're kind of within the effect of the curse, they will kill their firstborn kid. They will drown them. They'll feel compelled to give their kids a K name, because the kid who was drowned in that initial incident was named Keto. And that's what's going on here. The reason why Max is going after Kyra is because, she is the firstborn kid of that generation. It doesn't really matter, that is so far removed.
And at a certain point, Sarah's ghost has lost a little bit of, I guess, maybe some initial sentience. I mean, she's kind of, again, we mentioned that outsider, that she's kind of become something different than just a ghost.
Yes. Well, she manifests using that pointing woman tree and like sucks all the vitality of it and becomes kind of corporeal as well. And she's going after Mike because Mike is, he has relation to the event. Again, we talked about him having that genealogical connection. That is why he thought about killing Kyra and killing himself, is because the curse was acting on him. This must happen, just like it was happening with Max, and so on down the line. Because Sarah has, kind of gone insane over the process of being a ghost and having the run of this area, she has to go. Joanna shows up and fights off Sarah's ghost, even with the help of the outsider. Joanna is a solid enough bro to make that happen. And Mike is actually able to stop the curse by pouring lye on her and Keto's bones. He found where they were reburied, and gets rid of their remains.
Joanna's the real hero of this story.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, she realizes kind of what's happened, what's going on. She sets up all these things, she does everything right. She just happens to die in a parking lot before she can fix everything.
Right. She was so close.
And even from the grave, she comes back to really work on stuff, Yeah.
She's not
putting in work.
She's not here for a teary-eyed, reunion. No, she's here to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joanna as MVP. So the bones are now a soupy mess at the bottom of this canvas sack, a literal bag of bones. And Mike returns to the house only to find Kyra missing. Oh yeah, duh. I left this kid who was hunted by half the town alone. Obviously this would happen. She's been taken by Rogette. She has not left. In fact, Rogette is still around. And she wants to drown the kid herself, to make this happen, to squelch off the bloodline. And Maddie's ghost appears to protect Kyra and Mike, knocking Rogette, who is actually Max's daughter, into the lake.
Maddie's pretty cool too. Maddie and Joanna. Yeah. Heroes.
Tag team superheroes post-mortem. Yeah.
Yes.
and that's the end of the that's the end of kind of the body of the book. There's an epilogue where Mike has given up writing, specifically because of how senseless Maddie's death was. So like, oh, I've written so many of those myself. It makes no sense, having been through that, to even approach doing it again. So writing's behind him, and instead he has turned his attention to making his life work, adopting Kyra, even though, the court system is kind of aligned against him.
This was kind of a bummer, because I mean, like, you see what's happening, and he does get to see her from time to time, but I mean, like, she's literally just going to foster homes, and I just feel really bad for her.
That's awful. And she's just, it's crazy because, she's very young, but she is still old enough, and she has that psychic ability enough to feel what is happening. Like, I don't get the sense that Kyra, even if she ends up with Mike, has a very, happy or fruitful life ahead of her.
And my question is, what happened to the $80 million?
Oh,
I mean, wouldn't Kyra be her heir? Can't she just stay in town for a year with a foster family? Like,
I'm
get $80 million?
I'm very happy that she raised that, because guess what? The $80 million, that was never going to you. Turns out that Max DeVore left all of his money to a charity that was intended to spread computer literacy throughout the world.
One last trick.
One last fuck you. Oh, fuck you, Max.
You got bored.
Just picture him spiking a football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that is a kind of a whirlwind tour of
also a bummer.
Yeah.
Like, she stayed for nothing, and then she died, and then her daughter's in foster care. Even a millionaire that's a nice guy can't get her. Like,
yeah. It sucks. I feel really bad for Kyra. and that's Bag of Bones. We took a real whirlwind tour of this. I guess, I alluded to the fact that I was upset by the book's racial politics. There is a reading of this, I think, that, portrays what happened to Sarah as, a really awful thing. Like, everybody can agree that should never have happened, et cetera, et cetera. But don't you think that, people are still, like, just a little bit too upset about that so far on? Like, really, it's kind of like your anger at, bad treatment. You're kind of living in the past, and, you're making a big deal out of this. By making her as the victim of, a villain, and making it so racially charged, like, it almost saying, like, this almost reads a little bit like a polemic against any kind of reparations, right? Or any kind of, let's say, compensatory legislative efforts to make up for horrible injustices, like happens with her in the past, right? Like, can't you just get over it?
It's fair that it's kind of set up like she's very arrogant about town, and I mean, again, like, she seems very cool and likable and talented, but I mean, like, it's like you're saying, the way that it's written, she doesn't necessarily come off that great in it. None of the people involved come off that great. I mean, not that great is a real understatement. I mean, they're
yeah.
It's a rough ending to the book. I feel like this could have been a cool, creepy ghost story, and you could have just had it be anything but something that graphic.
Yeah. So, yeah, just I'm a little bit. It put me off my beer, I think. Just that aspect to it. Like I said, I believe that Stephen King his heart is in the right place. This just feels like it is on very hinky and shaky ground to me.
Well, and I guess kind of from a literary standpoint too, it's a very sleepy, slow, spooky kind of book. And when this kind of comes in, it's just such a tonal shift that you're just like, from the moment that Maddie gets shot, you're just like, what is happening? This is, I mean, it's like a slow burn that all of a sudden turns into like a forest fire. It's like if like you're reading like A Wind in the Willows, and Mr. Toad gets that car, and then there's a genocide. Like, like, wait a minute, I don't know. I like that Badger guy. Like, when did this genocide start?
This doesn't add up. Please.
Exactly.
Man, oh man. Yeah. So
The good news is this is going to make Song of Susanna like feel like a wild, fun joyride.
I suppose, yeah. I'm actually, champing at the bit.
We're going to read something light.
Yeah, demon babies. Whew. So I'll let that suffice for my final thoughts on this. Do you have anything else that you want to get off your chest as regards Bag of Bones?
No, I guess just I feel like 2/3 of a really good creepy ghost story and one something real not fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, I see why he likes the book, because I like the craft. I mean, I see why this is one of Stephen King's favorite books. Like the writing's very good. The plotting, fine.
Yeah.
Too many villains.
Also a problem. Yeah.
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 You can only have that many villains if you give them jobs and a tower structure.
Yes.
Some sort of organizational type of thing, a hierarchy, some Crimson Kings.
Yeah.
You gotta have a clear like chain of command.
Yeah, you have your TikTok man and then you have your gasher, clearly defined, delineated.
Exactly.
Oh. So thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back next time with From a Buick 8, and then we're going to hit Song of Susanna running. Autumn, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Mrs. Greer. That's at MISSUS Greer. You can also find me on the Duckfeed Slack and the Radio Free Midworld channel.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on the show. You can find me on Twitter at Cole Ross, that is KOLEROSS, and on other shows here on the Duckfeed.tv network. As for this show, how you can help it out, ratings and reviews are always very nice. And also, I like it when people spread the word. So if you have friends who you want to get into the Dark Tower, or friends who like Stephen King but haven't gotten into the Tower and may use these kind of interstitial episodes as an entry point, go ahead and send us their way. RadioFreeMidworld.com. Otherwise, though, keep on listening. We'll see you next week with From a Buick 8. And until then, long days and pleasant nights.